Hello and welcome to the Winchester Archives, a supernatural podcast. I'm Ed,
I'm Brooke.
and today we'll be discussing Season 2, Episode 4, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. That's a mouthful of an episode name. But before we get into the details, here's a quick reminder that there will be spoilers. We'll be connecting dots across the entire series, so if you're watching Supernatural the first time or have not finished the series yet, consider this your heads up. We will be talking about that. Also, an explicit content warning, as always, we are adults talking about an adult show, dealing with dark and sensitive topics, expect adult language, mature discussion, and dark humor. You can also find us on Upscrolled at Winchester Archives Pod, as well as YouTube and Patreon at Winchester Archives Podcast. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all the fun things, press all the buttons, do all the things to help us keep continuing to grow our community of archivists. We really appreciate it. It means a lot to us.
All right. And on to our episode specs and synopsis. This episode aired on October 19th, 2006. It was written by Rael Tucker and directed by Kim Manners. And our
Whoop.
supporting, yes, we love Kim Manners episodes. Our supporting cast is Tamara Feldman as Angela Mason and Christopher Jacott as Neil. So the boys are visiting their mother's grave when Dean stumbles upon a very weird sight of dead grass and flowers in like a perfect circle. And he finds out it's a grave site for Angela, who had died in a car crash a few days ago. They start out thinking this is a vengeful spirit buried on unholy grounds, but it turns out to be something else entirely due to a desperate man wanting to keep Angela around. And also, Dean finally tells Sam why he's been behaving so like weird and erratic.
Finally.
Yes.
Just took like 5 episodes. Well, 4, technically. And I will
Oh.
say, before we get into it too far, I apologize for my intro at the end of last episode where I said it's another vengeful spirit. I was technically wrong. Even though, like,
Mhm.
it's very similar, it's still technically wrong,
Yeah, I
which we'll get
know.
into.
So we open up the episode to a very sad girl, and she
Mhm.
has a male friend over who's like, here's beer and chocolate and some emo music to mend your broken heart.
Hell yeah.
I know. What a good night. She grabs his hand and says he's a good friend, but obviously Neil wants to be more than friends. When she grabs
Yeah.
his hand, he's like butterflies in stomach. But he keeps that to himself. He doesn't tell her. We hear a knock at the door and she says, "Oh my God, it's him." So Neil gets up to answer it. He's like, "I'll take care of it."
Mhm.
And it is her ex, and he just kind of bullies his way inside. And when they get into the house, they see Angela had disappeared out the window.
Mhm.
And now we see her and she's driving very erratically. And her ex-boyfriend, Matt, calls her and she's like yelling at him because he's like, "I'm sorry." And she's saying like, "No, you're not," things like that, and then she, just kinda crashes into a cement barrier while on the phone with
Mhm.
him, and now we see the Supernatural logo. So, what was your, like, thoughts when you saw that? Because I was like, "What's supernatural here?"
Yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, "Oh, she must have, like, saw a ghost in the middle of the road," or, like, like, that's where, like, the vengeful spirit comes in because I was, like, still going into this thinking it's a vengeful spirit. So I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, it's like the first episode, like, where it's, like, the haunted girl, like, in the middle of the road and, like, cause someone to crash." Like, that was
Yeah.
my first thought. I'm like, "Well, that just seems, like, really, really repetitive if that's the case." So I was like, "There's something else here that I'm missing."
It was super weird to me. I was thinking the same thing, like, what caused her to crash if it wasn't, like, her
Her
erratic
just being a
thinking?
bad driver, I guess.
Or, like, was she possessed or something? Like, I was just like, "This is confusing." We got no context.
Yeah, but turns out she's just a bad driver.
Well, she was driving on high emotion.
High emotion on the phone, but, like, swerved off the road.
Yes,
Like, that's what I mean, like, that's just being a bad driver. I've driven plenty pissed off before, and that's like, I've never driven off the road.
true. But they say to not do that for that reason. But, yeah. So, after that happens, we see the brothers in their Impala, Dean just starts out saying, like, "This is stupid." And we find out that it's because Sam wants to go visit their mom's grave, and Dean thinks it's stupid because nothing was buried. It's just a headstone.
Mhm.
Sam says this is about her memory, and he just thinks after their dad passing, he feels this is the right thing to do. So while Sam is at her grave, we see him burying his dad's dog tags there, and he says, like, "Dad would want you to have this."
Yeah, so sad.
It is. Dean is avoiding it at all costs. He's just
Yeah.
walking around the cemetery, and he finds a very weird looking dead tree, and it's also a perfect circle of dead grass.
Mhm.
And there's a temporary grave marker with some dead flowers on it too. Dean asked somebody who works there about it, and, like, they said they don't use pesticides or anything unusual. It just kinda everything died. Dean thinks it's worth looking into, but Sam thinks he's trying to compensate for avoiding his feelings.
And I think it's a bit of both.
Yes. But either way, Dean talks Sam into going to the college her dad works at, and they're pretending to, like, be her friends.
Yeah, and I was actually looking into, like, the whole, like, dead thing, like, the dead plant thing,
Mhm.
and, like, it is a trope, like, a common trope in, like, media and stuff of, like, when there's evil around, dead things die quicker,
Mhm.
as, like, a whole, like, it's almost like sapping the energy kinda thing, but the closest thing I could find to, like, a thing like this in folklore was, like, what's known as a fairy circle, which is basically a ring of mushrooms or like overgrown grass in like a perfect circle, which causes the surrounding plant life to wither and die as the mushrooms like mycelia spreads through the soil and like takes up the nutrients, and thus there's less for the plants to live on, so they all die.
Oh.
Um, and then also, what's neat is the mushrooms actually release a chemical called this is gonna be wrong, but it's called gibberellins that can cause plants to rapidly grow, and thus the combination of these things makes a ring appear of like super growing of plants, while the
Oh.
inner circle as well as the outer circle dies. So it looks
Mhm.
really weird, um, that this one group of like mushrooms or this one group of like plants are growing very well, and then everything else is not. So it looks really
Mhm.
weird. It's really cool though. But in folklore, like in like the lore around these things, the rings are said to be created by a few things, mainly obviously with called fairy rings, the fae, would be like the
Mhm.
first thing that people usually attribute to them. The other one is like the devil himself, which,
Oh.
I feel like in the least of supernatural, the devil has better things to be doing at the moment. Um,
Mhm.
and then there's also apparently tales of like tales of dragons and like the circles being like their fiery tails resting and causing like
Oh.
the rest of it to like in that area to die because it's like fire,
Mhm.
which I found fascinating about that one. But for the most part, the folklore about the circle says that they are a dangerous thing, and entering one can cause the fae to become like pissed and curse you, or they could like grab you and bring you to like their domain. It's basically like a portal area. Um, so overall, this is definitely a super like a thing that is either, if you're looking at it through a pure folklore perspective, definitely can be supernatural related. Uh, Not quite the way that related in this episode from what I could find, but
Mhm.
otherwise, mushrooms, which are fascinating little things, man. I love mushrooms. They're so fascinating.
They are, but also don't mess with the fae.
Yeah.
Now I know to not go in dead grass patches. I don't wanna be taken to the fairy domain.
Get yoinked.
Ah.
But yeah, that was the closest thing I could find to like the whole plants dying in a
Mhm.
circle thing.
That makes a lot of sense, though, and a lot of good context there, too.
Hmm.
But, yeah, now they're heading to the college. We find out her dad teaches ancient Greek at the
Hell yeah.
college. Yes, you are very familiar with those courses.
Yes, as someone who has a degree in it, yes.
Mhm. Dean points out a very weird-looking book, but turns out it's just Greek because he's like, "This is an interesting book," trying to say it's like a spell book or something, and he's like, "Yeah, I teach ancient Greek."
Mhm.
Dean is laying it on, like,
Yeah.
super thick that sometimes you can still feel a presence of somebody after they're gone, and Sam is like, "That's a perfectly normal feeling during grief." Like, he's, like, kinda counteract what Dean is saying, and her
Yeah, like you said, Dean's definitely laying it on very thick and very very accusatory in his tone of
Mhm.
like, "You did something wrong. What are you doing?" Like,
Yes.
it's weird that you're seeing her around everywhere. Like, whoa.
Mhm.
While Sam's being much more reasonable, saying like, "Yeah, that's a normal feeling during grief," which is like a real people do still feel the presence of people around them after someone dies because it's a weird thing to change like that in grief. So
Yes, it is. And he also very sadly says he still calls her phone to, like, hear her
yeah,
voicemail, and he just feels, like, so lost without her.
poor guy.
I know, this is just, like, a grieving father that Dean, like, kinda bullies this episode.
Oh, yeah, especially next time they meet, because damn.
Mhm. They leave the college, and Sam is just continuing to tell Dean he thinks this is because he doesn't wanna talk about their parents, so he's imagining a hunt where there isn't one. Dean
Mhm,
gets obviously pissed and says he's going out for a drink alone. Now we see Matt, Angela's ex, being all sad on his couch,
mhm,
and his plant suddenly dies. But he doesn't notice because he's drinking and watching videos of him and Angela, like, running around a field and having a good time.
mhm.
But he pauses the TV on, like, her smile, and he sees a reflection in the background, and then he dies by a slit noise and, like, blood everywhere.
Yeah, very much like a slitting your throat kind of vibe.
Mhm. Yes. Now we see Dean going inside Angela's house and looking
Mhm.
around, but he didn't expect somebody to be there, and it was this girl. She was just wearing, like, a tank top and underwear, and she, like, screams and runs back into her room,
It's like, "Who
understandably.
the hell are you?"
Yes, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just her cousin Alan coming to pick up stuff," and then she's like, "Cool," and then she gets dressed and comes out, and
Yeah.
it's like, one of my thoughts was this is a very dated scene.
Mhm.
Nowadays, I would be like, "I don't care you're her cousin, get out."
Yeah. Like, "Who the hell are you?"
Yes,
'Cause he's also just like, "How else would I get the keys?" And it's like, "Well, I can think of a few ways."
yes,
That are
exactly,
less benign than you being her cousin.
yes, and then, like, calling her dad to, like, verify he sent somebody
Mhm.
over.
Yeah.
Just a lot of stuff.
But God wrote this, so
Yeah, exactly.
plot armor.
Dean was asking her, though, like, what is she really like? Because he's like, as a roommate and a friend, you see a side of her nobody else does, so, like, what was she actually like?
Yeah, to me, I was
And
just like, he's fishing for, like, a witchcraft shit.
yes. And then this girl just keeps crying, saying she's really great over and over again. And she does tell Dean that Matt killed himself last night by slitting his own throat. And she's like, who does that?
Yeah, who does that?
And she said he told her for days after Angela's death, he would actually physically see her around, like
Mhm,
not just like the grief presence that her dad was talking about. And I say, we already know this roommate is lying about something because Dean
mhm,
asked if Angela had any reason to be mad at Matt. And she says, no, of course not. But like, she was really upset in the beginning.
mhm.
So, yes, she had a reason to be
Yeah.
mad at Matt. But then he just says, okay, well, where does Matt live? And apparently she tells him, and I'm like, "Why?"
Yeah, that's another weird thing that you wouldn't really do ever, right?
Yes. Like, "That's none of your business?"
Like, this dude's a stranger.
Yes. Now we see Sam in the motel room, and I'm bringing this up because it kinda becomes like a reoccurring joke throughout the whole series.
Mhm,
We hear the TV, and it says, "Next on the Skin Channel, Casa Erotica 4, The Tale of Two Latin Beauties." But Sam is so weirdly sitting on the edge of the bed and zoned in. It looks like he's watching, like, Carl Sagan or something.
Yeah.
Eh,
It's
like
really weird how the position he is in is really, like, bizarre compared to what's on like, supposed to be on the TV,
yes, it's like he's having, like, a philosophical discussion with the television instead of, like, what's actually on.
while he's actually just watching porn. Like,
Y yes, but it's fine. Dean walks in and Sam, like, very hurriedly shuts off the TV. And Dean being Dean has to, like, drag it out,
oh, yeah.
and he's like, "Awkward." And he starts telling him about Angela and her boyfriend, and then he eyes the XXX pay-per-view pamphlet that's on the TV, and he just, like, keeps going on with his story, but he makes it
Mhm.
so Sam knows what he knows.
Yeah.
Dean
Mhm.
does say, like, so sarcastically, he's like, "You're right, there's nothing to this case," even though Angela's boyfriend killed himself last night by slitting his own throat, which is totally normal, and he was seeing her everywhere before he died. But that's just me transferring my feelings. So Sam is like, "Okay, there is something to this, and we should check out the apartment." But Dean's already been there, and he said it's full of dead plants, just like the cemetery.
Dun, dun, dun. We have a connection,
Yes. Dean then shows Sam that he stole her diary, and he's been reading it.
which is wild.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is. Even Sam is like, "You stole her diary?"
yeah, 'cause it's like, wow. I mean, it gets to the bottom of things, I guess, but, like, holy shit.
Mhm. But Dean says she's too nice. But he knows who her bestest friend in the whole wide world is, and that is Neil, and they're going over to his house.
Mhm,
They're pretending to be grief counselors from the college,
mhm.
and Neil is like, "I don't need any help. I can, like, grieve on my own," which is also valid, but we
Yeah.
find out why he doesn't need help later.
Mhm,
And then they mention Matt dying, so, like, 2 people dying very close together, the college wanted to make sure they were fine, and
mhm,
grief can make you do crazy things. And Neil says if Matt killed himself, it's not because of guilt, it's because of guilt, not grief. And he said the night
mhm,
of her accident, Angela walked in on him and another girl together, which I say was probably that roommate who
mhm.
said she had no reason to be mad at Matt.
Yeah. It's a very good assumption.
Yes. Then he says he needs to get ready for work and he'll be fine. And he just, like,
Mhm.
goes and back into his house. So now they're thinking this is a vengeful spirit case, and I'm
Just
saying,
like I did.
"Yes." But with 20 minutes left in the episode, I'm gonna say it's something else.
Or there's a twist here somewhere.
Yes. Sam is thinking everything's over because she got her revenge because she killed Matt. So he's like, "Is there really anything else we need to do?" And Dean says the only way to know for sure is to burn the bones. And Sam is like,
Always. Always the default answer, burn the bones.
"Yes." But Sam is like, "What? She died last week. There aren't any bones. It's a decomposing body."
Yeah, you gotta burn the whole body.
And Dean is like, "Whatever, it needs to be done."
I mean, I think that's pretty a valid response, though. Like, that kinda is what it is.
Yeah, I
Not like they
know.
haven't burnt, like, fresh bodies before.
Well, like, I know we've already gone over this, but it does cross my mind about how just the gasoline in a match is not burning a whole body plus its bones. Like, it needs to be so much hotter than that.
You'd
But
have
in
to have a
this
lot of gasoline. Like, you'd have to, like they have to have a
Mhm.
lot of fuel on that thing because, like, yeah, it'll burn to some level, but it more will just, like, melt, like, the flesh. It won't actually, like, burn the bones.
Yes, like, crematoriums, they are very hot.
Unless, like, magically where it's, like, you just gotta have the bones touch fire and then they're burned. Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's, like, all the level they need is just, like, it to be on fire and it counts.
Yeah, yeah. Then we can just default to, like, God wrote it, so it's fine.
Yeah, and like you said, like crematoriums burn at like significantly higher degrees because in order to like actually burn bones to like
Mhm.
ash is like almost impossible. Like you need absurd heat to like
Yes.
burn it that much to like actually turn it to ash or like turn like the body to ash.
That's what I'm saying. So maybe, like, you're right that it's, like, the fire and, like, the purification way, not
That's my
necessarily.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna stick with, because it always crosses my mind every time they do it. I'm like, "That's not going to be ashes."
Yeah, no, that's just gonna be like slightly charred bones.
Yes. But you know what? They do what they do, and they go dig up her grave.
Uh-huh.
And it's actually a perfect rectangle. They're getting really good at this without anybody seeing them,
Yeah, which is impressive.
right? Even though she was just buried last week, so maybe the outline was still there. But, whatever. They open up the coffin and a body isn't there,
Dun dun dun.
and it actually looks like one was never there. It's, like, very
Yeah,
pristine.
perfect. Except
Yes.
for the top part that's ripped open
Yes.
that has some weird things scrawled on the top.
I know we'll get to that in a second. As now we switch POV to Neil, and he goes down some stairs, and Angela is at his house, not her body, but, like, her actually.
So yes, her body, but like actually alive and moving.
Yes, in the basement. And, like, she loves him now, and she said she missed him and, like, kisses him a lot.
Once, I saw this scene, I was immediately like, "Oh, we're pet cemeterying this bitch."
Mhm.
That was my first thought was like, "Pet cemetery, uh-oh,
Yes.
she's about to eat him."
Mhm. And then back to the brothers. In the coffin, they see Greek symbols that were on her dad's book.
Dun, dun,
So
dun.
now they're
The dad did it.
yes, they're at this man's house, and Sam is trying to be nice, but Dean is not having it.
Yeah,
He
Dean is just, like, going in, is being very, very brutal to this dude.
yes, I didn't even, like, write down how mean he
Like, I
was.
was even, like, taken aback. I was like, "Holy crap." Like, he is just, like, being a dick right now, just, like, assuming it's him.
Mhm. It's like he opens the door and he's like, "Oh, you're Angela's friends," and Sam starts talking nice, and Dean's like, "Yeah, we gotta talk." And
Mhm,
then he shows him the symbols, and he's like, "What are these symbols?" And then asks for, like, an explanation without explaining anything, and her dad explains those symbols are part of an ancient Greek divination ritual, and Dean's like, "Yeah, for necromancy. I already looked it
mhm,
up." Like, "Okay,
mhm.
Dean." And he says they're for reanimating corpses to make them into zombies. And her father says, "Yes, according to the
Yeah.
legends." And then he's asking Dean what this is about, and then Dean just starts accusing him of doing it. He's like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, you
basically, like,
can't."
certain dead things need to stay dead and all this stuff.
Yes, and then the guy's like, "I'm gonna call the police." So
Very reasonable response.
so Sam just says, like, "We're leaving, sorry about that."
Yeah. I just wanted to say because like, I paused on the page that Dean holds up with all the symbols on it, and they're definitely Greek letters, so they got that part right. Like, pretty much all the symbols are Greek letters. However, from what I could do with, like, trying to translate it and stuff, it's gibberish. It's just a bunch
Mm,
of random Greek letters around a triangle. And
oh,
also, I swear to God, I've seen this triangle with, like, the circle on top and, like, the 2 corners rounded in like that. I swear I've seen it before, but I could not for the life of me find it anywhere. I
huh,
even looked up, like, Greek symbols, alchemical symbols, math symbols, anything to try to find this symbol because I swear I've seen it before, but I just could not find anything. So if you know what the hell this triangle with the circle in, like, the 2 corners is, please tell me in the comments because I was spending, like, like, hours yesterday trying to find this stupid triangle and could
mhm,
not find it, at all. However, the thing that I do know about this, because I actually took a class in college when I was getting my degree in ancient Greek magic.
that's
And,
nice.
in ancient Greece, it was very common for them to use necromancy. However, they used it more as what the word necromancy, like the root word, means rather than like making a zombie. I.e., necros meaning dead body, and menatia meaning divination.
Mhm.
So it's a divination with a dead body. So it's much more like necromancers would perform a ritual to summon and commune with the dead rather than bringing back zombies. However, I did learn in my ancient magic class that there were rituals and basically counter rituals that were done to bodies in order to prevent the necromancer from going to the grave and claiming the soul as theirs,
Mhm.
and not allowing them to rest. So that's how the necromancers did it back then. It was like a worry that they would freshly buried bodies, unless they've had like this protection done to them or like stuff like that, the necromancer would come to the grave site and basically take the soul of the
Oh.
person to use for their necromancy rather than like animating the body itself.
Mhm.
So yeah, the whole like turning them into zombies thing, not really a thing as far as I could find in ancient Greece outside of like maybe a vampire thing here or there. Because remember, vampires are undead. Just in
Mhm.
supernatural, they're like split off into their own category of like these are almost like different versions of humans, like, they're more like
Yeah.
real creatures rather than undead people in
Yeah.
Supernatural, because, like, a lot of the ways later on that they describe how to kill, certain how to kill zombies and stuff, some of the things are crossovers from vampires, and it's like, that's because the vampires are considered undead. It's just
Mhm.
in Supernatural that they're considered separate.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like an what they did then is like an ancient form of like the Ouija board.
Basically, yeah, that's what a
Mhm.
lot more of their necromancy was talking to the dead to get answers rather and insight rather than
Mhm.
making a zombie to do whatever you want physically.
Yeah, that makes sense. So as they're leaving this poor man's house, Sam is yelling at Dean about how he's spiraling out of control. And
Correct.
and Dean is like just in denial. He's like, "No, I'm not." And Sam says he's scared and he says he's lost everyone and now he's afraid he's losing Dean too.
Mhm.
And Dean's like, "I hear you and I'm sorry, but I can't think about it right now because we have a zombie." And Sam just like laughs and said their lives are weird.
I mean, true though, like, really, like, because even him
Mhm.
saying, like, he hears you and I'm sorry about that is, like, valid, but it's also, like, it is also true there's now a zombie running around that they kinda have to deal with, and that is such a weird thing. They're
Yes.
trying to grieve their dead parents like normal people, but then also they gotta go, like, stop a zombie from existing.
Yes. Exactly. Now we see Angela and Neil just like casually talking in his living room. And Neil says he needs to talk about Matt. And Angela's like, "Yeah, I'm done talking about him, actually."
Mhm,
And she's saying she didn't leave to go kill him, and she's only been at home with Neil.
mhm.
And he's proved his love to her by bringing her back to life.
Yikes.
Mhm.
Yeah, whenever
Yeah.
zombies start talking all lovey-dovey like that to you, run,
Mhm.
run.
And now
Seen way
Sam
too many, Pet Cemetery remakes for this to be end any kind of way, that's good.
yes, exactly. So now Sam is saying there's too much lore on zombies to narrow down, like, how to kill them. Some say, like, lighting them on fire or feeding their heart to dogs, shooting them in the head, using silver, etc.
Yeah,
Dean agrees that silver's a good place to start, and they just need to find her by figuring out who brought her back. And Dean thinks it's Neil who brought her back because her diary mentions how he's such a good friend all the time.
mhm.
And he's her father's TA, so he'd have access to all these ancient Greek books.
Wish they woulda read a little further in the diary before then, before, like, just accosting their dad or her dad about
Yes.
this, because like, that was just brutal.
Yes.
Uh, and I agree with Sam on a lot of these things in terms of folklore about zombies and undead in general, because he's right on some of the descriptions here. Because there is, like, Nordic, zombies that are called draugrs,
Mm.
Draugrs, something like that. I'm really bad at Norse, like, accents,
Mhm.
or, like, the way it's pronounced. But they are destroyed by burning the bodies, which makes sense.
Mhm.
It also makes sense with all of their, the ghost, you burn the body to, like, get rid of the ghost. Makes sense on that one. Another one, he was talking about, was about a heart. But I could not for the life of me, this is another one. If you guys know of this folklore, please let me know in the comments. I really am curious. I spent a lot of time looking this up too, trying to find a story of feeding the heart of a zombie to wild dog,
Mhm.
because like that is such a specific thing that I swear it was referencing a myth, but I
Mhm.
could not find it. I could not find any references to wild dog, like to like feeding hearts to wild dogs or anything like that. It was like a concept back in the day to like feed unwanted children to wild dogs, but that seems a little much of a stretch to me.
Yes.
The only concept that I could, like, kind of get to with about destroying a heart was, like, the staking of vampires, in the heart, which, again, vampires are undead, so it would make sense, and they even reference the fact that that's where the vampire lore got made in
Mhm.
their world because it's not canon in their world. But, yeah, that was,
Mhm.
like, the main thing I could find about, like, staking a heart. However, the destruction of the head is the most common cure for zombies, like most things,
Yes.
including, like, vampires in this universe. But they're basically doing what they do to vamps, cutting their head off or destroying the brain is the most common way to get rid of a living thing or an
Yes.
undead living thing. And so, yeah, that made sense. And then he said something about silver. And as we discussed before, silver being that pure thing that cleanses, it would make sense that it would destroy evil as in like resurrecting a dead body as like a zombie. It would make sense that silver would be effective. So all of these are
Mhm.
pretty on par with reasonable things to get rid of zombies or undead from
Mhm.
folklore, except for like I said, the wild dog specifically. I'm so curious. So please let me know if you know where that comes from. I really want to know.
Yeah, I was curious about that one the most too, 'cause like you said, it's like a big point to make.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
obviously it's very specific, and because it's so specific, I'm like, this has to reference something. And I know that there is like a lot of like folklore around wild dogs in general, because like they're usually around civilization, usually the outskirts of it, and usually kill some
Mhm.
people every once in a while, kill some livestock, and it's like that's like a threat. So like that would be folklorized for some reason for sure, and
Mhm.
used in like rituals and stuff. But like I could not for the life of me find a way to find one that says that's how you get rid of a zombie is by feeding its heart to wolves or wild dogs. So
But yeah, now at this point, they casually just walk into Neil's house. Sam points out that Dean's gun is loaded with silver bullets. And
thank you for the info dump there, Sam.
yes, exactly.
I just found it amusing just because like that was clearly a line just to get the audience up to speed as to why the gun randomly works now. But
Yeah.
it just gave me a chuckle because of that.
Yeah, me too. That's why I had to write it down. 'Cause
Yeah.
yep, and all the plants are dead. Although no one seems to be home, there is a basement door though that's locked from the outside. It has like an outside lock. And Dean says, "Unless this is where he keeps his porn." And then they open it and go downstairs. And then Dean is like, "Yep, it looks like a zombie pen to me." And I think it's just because there's a bed with blood on it.
Yeah, and it's like just like a mattress on a floor with some blanket. Like it's very like haphazard in the middle of the basement floor, which like looks suspicious.
But it also just kinda looks like a college dude's basement.
Yeah. Like I could easily see that being like, oh, my friend's crashing here and he just like threw a mattress on the floor. Uh
Yes.
or worse thing, since there was, locked from the outside.
Yes. That's also what I would be thinking too.
That's why I was like, "Ooh, either Neil's a real bad person or just like a, person into, reviving dead bodies,"
Yeah. Yep.
which is still not great.
They then find an open vent, and they're like, "Oh, Angela left through this vent."
Yeah,
And Dean here puts together that her roommate seemed very sad about Matt's death.
you called it.
Yeah, I did. We now see the roommate, and she hears something at the door, and she goes to open it, no one's there. But then Angela's behind her and grabs her and says, "Hi, Lindsay, I'm home," which was just like so funny to me because it's just like
Yeah.
a very weird line.
I like the line because, like, as, like, a vengeful, like, spirit, I feel like that's, like, the kind of, like, thing they would say, just to be, like,
Yeah,
extra dick about it.
that's true.
But I thought the thing was weird how she, like, teleported,
Yes.
unless she was already inside, knocked on the door, and, like, she just assumed it was from the outside, but, like,
Mhm.
thought that was a little weird, other than just for a
Yeah,
jump scare, but
that makes
'cause
sense.
zombies normally don't get the ability to teleport or, like, have ultra speed. Some of them are fast in media, but not, like, teleport fast.
Mhm. Yeah, I think she may have already been inside.
That's gotta be it, but
But now Angela is, running around trying to kill Lindsay, and she trips and falls, like, into the scissors, right into her chest.
It's
However
such a brutal sight. It was like,
yes.
"Oh, that didn't feel
Yeah.
good."
However, it doesn't even hurt her. She just gets up and grabs on to Lindsay and goes to stab her, but the brothers show up just in time to shoot her, and she quickly runs away through a window. And I
Yeah.
actually have a fun fact here. The actress who played Angela, she said this was her first role ever, and she was, like,
Oh, wow.
early 20s, and she begged the director, Kim Manners, to let her do all of her own stunts because, when you're 20, you're invincible and you don't think you can ever get hurt. So she said she was running around and she's like, "Angela is supposed to be really fast getting out that window." And she said she tripped and hit her temple on something and she went unconscious for like 2 minutes.
Ooh.
Yeah, she said she came to and everybody was, like, around her, and she's like, "I'm good. What's wrong?"
To be fair, if I was in her position too, regardless of how old I was or anything, I'd be like, "Yes, I wanna do all of my own stunts." So
Yes.
I don't blame her on that one. I did think I wanted to check off our little list of things that Sam has suggested earlier. Apparently, destroying the heart, not great right now. Not looking good because
Mhm.
that scissors went right into her heart.
Yes. They did.
And also, silver bullets clearly didn't do much because it may have, like, irritated her or hurt her a little, but she just vamped up that window real fast.
Yes, exactly. Because Dean does say the silver bullets weren't enough, so they need something else. So Sam says he sees nailing the undead back into their grave beds mentioned a few times. So he's saying he even says this is where I think vampire lore comes from.
Yeah,
The
and that's correct.
Yeah, it is. We went over that. You talked about that in the vampire episode.
And someone in this episode. But, yeah, staking
Mhm.
them back into their grave is definitely, like, the go-to for a lot of these things.
So now they're like, "How do we get her back to the cemetery?" They find Neil at the university. Dean walks in his office and says, I've heard of some people doing pretty desperate things to get laid, but you take the cake." And they're telling him they know about the ritual. Neil says they're crazy. Dean says they're not the crazy ones because they don't mess with dead things. And then I say debatable
Mhm.
because they do a lot.
Yeah,
So much.
it's like half the job.
Yes, but they don't I guess they don't in this way unless it comes to each other. They say she killed Matt and she tried to kill Lindsay. Neil is still denying it. Dean actually goes up and grabs Neil's shirt and, like, squares up to him, and he says he can make it right, but they need to know where she is. And they spot some dead plants behind his desk. So Dean knows she's there, but
Mhm.
Neil is saying she's not. Dean
So
said
Dean does a very smart thing here, which I, like, really appreciated from his aspect.
mhm.
This is a very cunning thing to do all of a sudden when he realized that she's probably in the room with them.
Yeah, 'cause he's like, "Well, we have to do another ritual to undo the one you did over her grave. The ingredients needed are black roots, scarweed, candles." And he says it's complicated, but it'll get the job done. Dean says he thinks Neil should go with them, and Neil
Mhm.
says no. Dean leans in and says to leave coolly, no sudden movements, and do not make her mad. And then they leave. Neil opens up a closet door and she's in there. She
Mhm.
says she wants to go to the cemetery to kill them because she's like, they're trying to kill me, so we got to kill them.
Mhm.
She tells Neil if he loves her, he wouldn't let anybody hurt her. And he says, "Okay, I'm gonna go get the car and I'll be back. You just stay here."
Mhm.
He is so nervous, though, and he, like, drops his car keys trying to get in the car, and
Yeah.
she doesn't
Just, like,
stay.
randomly is there again because she can teleport apparently.
Well, she's fast.
She has the power of jump scare.
Yes. She accuses him of trying to leave her, and he's like, "No, I wasn't," and then she just snaps his neck right there.
Yeah. Showing that basically the what, because Dean references Pet Cemetery in this
Mhm.
episode at some point too. And it's very much in case you aren't aware of the way that is, it's like when a dead thing is brought back, its soul is not there. So it's a lot more feral, a lot more like animalistic, a lot more mean. because it's
Mhm.
not the good parts are usually left behind. And it's like one of those things where like this kind of proves it. And I like this twist, even though it's like sad for Neil. It is like one of the cool things where it's like, oh, now she's just kind of, on a rampage,
Mhm. Yes, exactly.
which I found kind of cool. Where it's like she goes from being like this innocent, like, oh, she's being revived against her will to being like now she's just like killing everyone. And like I just wanted to touch on some of the things Dean said about that ritual because in most like folklore, most magic can be undone by doing like a cleansing or a purifying ritual. So that part is true. Like you can like if you do a ritual to bring someone back, you can also do a ritual to undo that and let them go.
Mhm.
Generally, in most magic, there's like an undo rituals. And let's go through the ingredient list though, because the ingredient list I found interesting. Blackroot is an ingredient that is used in magical rituals fairly commonly, and it's usually used for getting rid of negative energy or unwanted spiritual attachment, which I think a zombie would be applicable to that.
Mhm.
So that part, check. Good job. As for Scarweed, again, this is another episode. This is the episode where, man, some of the shit they're saying, I just don't think exists, and they just made it up because it sounds cool. Like
Mhm.
Scarweed sounds cool. I could not, for the life of me, find anything that was ever referred to as Scarweed. Because like, even while like, just because like I was like looking up the phrase Scarweed and trying to find any references at all, and just for like even more clarity on this, the shitty Google AI, right? Even like, because I at a certain point, I clicked enough links where I was like desperate enough where I was like, all right, let me read at least what this says and see if I can give me like a guiding thing, right? A way to look. And
Mhm.
it even said like 4 different plants. Like, every time I searched for it in a slightly different way, it's like, "Oh, yeah, this is referring to, like, a completely different plant than I said before," and it's like, "Okay, this doesn't exist,
Mhm.
I don't think." But if I'm wrong, again, please let me know in the comments if you know what a scarweed is, because, again, I couldn't find it anywhere. I looked on, like, Wikipedias, I've looked on, like, botany sites,
Mhm.
just trying to find anything referencing scarweed, and it only came up with things about, like, weed, like marijuana weed.
Oh. Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't think there's any weed called scarweed because also I wouldn't smoke that.
No.
Um, but it sure does sound like magic. So let me know if you know what a scarweed is. And then candles are 100% used in pretty much every ritual ever,
Yes.
because they're a good symbol to use for fire. They can also be used to like represent many different things or used as like a way to like burn things to like purify them or cleanse them, things like that. They're also very good things to focus on, because a lot of ritual is about like having a point of focus and focusing your concentration into that point. And a candle flame in a dark room is a very good thing to focus your attention on.
Mhm.
So that's another thing. And also, they're very easy and common to get a hold of both in modern times and in earlier times because candles were how they lit things, how they like, had
Mhm.
light in the dark. So candles were fairly common, so most people could get them and use them. I think, for the most part, makes sense. I just really wanna know what a scarweed is.
Valid. Me too. So they do, like, follow through with this. They go to the cemetery and they're lighting candles, and Sam is like, "Is this even gonna work? Like, is the
Mhm.
ritual going to work?" And Dean says he doesn't really think it's going to, but it's all he could come up with in the moment.
Yeah, it's just a trap to try to lure her in so they could stake her into the
Mm,
coffin.
yes. They hear ruffling in the leaves around them now, and Angela is now behind Sam. He points the gun at her, and Angela is like, "Hey, I didn't ask to be brought back, and I'm still a person." And without
Mhm.
saying anything, Sam just shoots her in the head, which is interesting to me because just last episode, peop the vampires were telling him that, and he let them go.
Yeah, I think there is a very big
Um,
difference here, though, too.
yeah, it is. She's, like, killing a bunch of people and stuff. So,
Yeah, and
like,
I think and it seemed very fake to me. It seemed very good she was trying to play on emotions kinda thing,
yes,
which I think
exactly.
Sam must have seen through.
Yeah, because usually his flaw is giving them the benefit of
Yeah.
the doubt.
Yeah, and, like, in this case, I think it's, like, too far gone because she's literally a zombie.
Yeah,
Like, at least vampires, it's like they were, like, trying their best and gave a lot of, like, goodwill gestures, you know? She
yeah,
hasn't really done that, she just kinda murdered everyone.
yes, that is true. It doesn't kill her though, the shot to the head,
Mhm.
and Dean shoots her, like, 4 times. It's actually 3. I I wrote 4, but it is 3 because of something I'm about to tell you in a minute. And then
Uh-huh.
she falls into her grave, and then he stabs her into the coffin and says, "What's dead should stay dead."
Uh-huh.
And my second fun fact I found out from this actress is she said, first of all, when she was chasing Sam through the woods, she said she was not supposed to catch up to him, and she did anyway and tackled him, and that was not supposed to happen. But she was just so excited that it did.
I mean, I think that made it better.
Yes. And then since she insisted on doing her own stunts and they told her they were only giving her one chance of the, like, falling into the grave, it had to be 3 steps and then a fall backwards. And she said it
Mhm.
had to be timed right, so she actually fell into the coffin, 'cause there she was like, "If I was too short, my legs wouldn't make it. If I was too close, my head wouldn't make it." So, like,
Yeah.
she actually had to, like, measure it out all the way. And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, that would be pretty difficult to do," especially with the, like, running leap onto Sam that she wasn't supposed to do, like, that kinda messed up the timing of it all.
I feel like it worked out though with the
Mhm.
next bit too of big Sam being hurt, that it makes more sense that she caught up.
Yes, exactly. They get her in there, they do the thing, everything's great. Sam says the fake ritual was a smart move, but then he says, "But did you have to use me as bait?" And Dean says he figured Sam was her type because she has bad taste in men.
Uh,
And then Dean looks back at Mary's headstone and Sam's like, "Do you wanna stay?" And Dean says, "No." And he just, like, gets in the car to move
mhm.
on. And as they're driving, Dean decides to pull over, and he doesn't just pull over on the side, he, like, crosses the lane, like, goes left of center to, like, the other side of the road,
Yeah.
and then gets out of the car, and Sam gets out, and he's like, "Hey, what's wrong?" And Dean says he's sorry for the way he's been acting, and he's sorry for their dad dying. And he says it doesn't take a genius to figure out what happened, but that he had a full recovery, and I say in parentheses, again, from, like, his
Mhm.
heart attack and now,
Mhm.
and his full recovery was a miracle, and not even 5 minutes later, their dad is dead and the cult is gone. And he says he doesn't know what all was involved, but what he does know is his dad is dead because of him. What he doesn't know is his dad made the choice. But anyway, he says Sam and his dad are the most important people in his life, and he should not have came back. It wasn't natural. He was dead and he should have stayed dead. That's why this was such a big deal to him.
Mhm.
And he says, like, this is everything that's been on his mind. And he knows Sam can't do anything to make it better. And that's where the episode ends.
Very sad ending.
Yes. This is why John should have told him before he died.
Yes.
Like, just saying, like, "The deal's already done, you can't stop it.
Mhm.
Bye."
Yeah. I mean, if I was Dean, that would be my assumption too, because it seems all too convenient
Mhm.
to make it to be anything other than some kind of bargain or deal.
Yes, exactly.
And also, if you would have told him that he summoned this Azazel with the symbol of Azazel, a lot of things would have happened. Like, he was just better at communicating things.
I
So much
know.
better.
So much. But it's fine.
Well, then we wouldn't have this much drama.
Alright, let's move on to our crime counter. I got 2. So, desecration of a grave and a corpse, 5 years.
Crazy that that's 5 years.
Yes. About 5 years. I'm sure.
Like, compared to, like, the B&Es and all those other things, it's just like, it's crazy that digging up a corpse is 5 years.
Yep. And then they did do a B&E into Neil's home, even though they did just casually walk in, but, like, it's still that's about 2
Yeah.
years. So, let's get to the episode review. For story and pacing, I gave it a 4 and you gave it a 3.
Mhm.
I thought this was pretty well paced out as a story. And
Yeah.
it showed they don't know everything still.
I agree. I think it was overall a pretty good pacing. I did think there was a couple back and forth there that like didn't logically make a ton of sense to happen. Like them going to like yell at their dad and stuff was like, I understand it's like for character moments and stuff, but like I just felt it was weird how they went back and forth being like Neil's in like everyone's house like 5 times, and it's just like, what is
Mhm.
happening? but
Agreed.
but overall, yeah, I thought it was a pretty good story and pacing. Like I didn't have any complaints or anything. It was just kind of like meh for me.
Makes sense. For monster lore, we both did give it a 3. I think, like, it was pretty well explained compared to some episodes, but it wasn't very compelling.
Yeah, like, it made a lot of sense. Like, I gave it a 3 because it made a lot of sense in terms of it explained it well in the story of, like, what is happening. Like,
Mhm.
it explained it all, but, like, I gave it a 3 because, man, there was so many things that I just could not find anything about that just, like, it
Mhm.
feels like they made stuff up, and, like, I prefer it when they're super accurate and they've proven that they can be, so that took away some points for me, that they were, like, accurate to some levels, but then some levels clearly not. Or
Yeah.
or I could just be bad at research, but I really don't think I am. Like, normally, I feel like I can find most of the things they referred to. This is, like, the first one that kinda stumped me on, like, 4 different levels, and I'm like, "I don't know if they just made this stuff up or what."
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
So I had to dock him some points for that.
For character development, I gave it a 5 and you gave it a 4.
Mhm.
I thought about giving it a 4, but I really think the ending really solidified the 5, like, why Dean is acting the way he is.
For sure. I gave it a 4 just because I agree with you completely. The reason it was a 4 and I took a point off was because they kind of did a similar thing literally last episode where Dean kinda gets super angry and super
Mhm.
violent and then, like, learns the lesson, and then this episode he gets angry and super violent and then doesn't as learn the same lesson. So I just took a point off because 'cause I'm like, "Okay, you didn't learn anything from last episode."
Grief isn't linear.
Sure.
He went
Yeah,
backwards.
that's fair.
No,
But
I
that's why I took
totally
a
get
point.
it, though. Yeah, makes sense. Visuals and direction, I gave it a 4, and you gave it a 3.
Uh-huh.
I love Kim Manners. I love everything he does with his direction,
Mhm.
but I feel like it was lacking for some of his other episodes, which is why I didn't get a 5.
Yeah, I gave it a 3 because it was fine. There wasn't, like, any cool makeup or anything on, like, the like, anything that made her feel, like, super different than just a person.
Mhm.
Like, there was a couple like, when she did, like, the bullet hole in the head thing, that kinda looked cool, but for the most part, it was just, like, a standard like, nothing blew my mind. So I was
Yeah,
just like, "It's average," 3, average.
that makes sense. Emotional impact, we both gave it a 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an emotional one. Dean's
I
going through it.
yeah, I felt bad for Dean a lot, but I also felt bad for her dad. 'Cause, oh
Yes.
my god, that one just, like, made me uncomfortable. I was like, "Damn, dude." But
Mhm.
yeah, I thought it was a very emotional episode. It's a very serious episode.
Yes,
So,
it definitely is. Rewatchability, I gave it a 4 and you gave it a 3.
yeah.
I like this story, so I could see myself rewatching it.
Yeah, like, I give it a 3 because it's, like, fine. Like, I wouldn't, like, super go out of my way or anything. It wasn't my favorite episode ever, but it was
Mhm.
definitely, like it was good. Like, I would watch it again.
Yeah. And then the salt and sass, we both gave it a 1.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe a 2 almost, like, I was bordering 2 because there was a few funny lines, especially, like, with, like, Sam being, like, hurt at the end, like, that whole banter about the in the graveyard was fun. The
Mhm.
random line about, like, maybe that's where he keeps his porn when it like, earlier in the episode, Sam was caught watching porn, I thought was kinda
Mhm.
funny, like, that was a funny thing, but it wasn't like this wasn't meant to be a funny episode. This was meant to
Yeah.
be a serious episode, so it's like that's what just is what it is, there wasn't very much banter, but, like, it didn't need the banter, it shouldn't have had the banter, so, fine.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
still gets a 1 because of that.
Mhm. That makes my average score a 3.57
And mine's a 3.0.
for a combined score of 3.29 out of 5.
Yeah, so let us know if you guys agree with our scores or disagree with our scores or we're being too harsh because I feel like I'm maybe a little too harsh on this episode, but that was just my
Mhm.
initial gut, you know, gut
Yeah.
responses to those. So let us know what you think. Anything else you'd like to mention about this episode?
No?
Alrighty then. Well, that brings us to the end of season 2, episode 4. Children shouldn't play with dead things, and I agree with that sentiment. Uh, Thank you for joining us this week as we discovered that not all undead things are vengeful spirits, and that some are actually vengeful corpses.
Mhm.
Next week, we'll be looking into another interesting case of psychic powers. So whenever you're ready, see you in the archive. Goodbye.
Bye.